So when you're trying to fix a plein air painting, the first thing that you want to do is identify your problems that you need to fix after you've actually done the painting. So the first step is to actually just get out there and do a painting, and you don't want to be too overly concerned with problems. I mean, you're going to be adjusting and fixing your problems on the fly anyways. And so I actually encourage you, in a way, you want to create a situation where maybe some problems might even arise. If you feel like when you plein air paint, there's never any problems, then you might not be pushing yourself here. It might be time to actually experiment with a few different things. Right here, I am experimenting with several things. One of them is primarily this split double palette, where I have a warm and cool of each primaries, and I'm even utilizing some secondaries. So I have ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow lemon, cadmium yellow deep, warm white by Gamblin, titanium white, and then a little bit of burnt sienna at the bottom. And so I'm using a palette that's like way more extended than what I normally would do to try to paint with. The other thing, as you can see, is my canvas is toned also with a cadmium orange. And so trying to use that for warmth, trying to play off warms and cools, but I'm really experimenting here. I'm also experimenting with some new brushes. I bought some very, very cheap brushes from the art supply store but I was attracted to the fact that they were short-handled. So I'm experimenting on several levels here, and that's almost always going to create some problems that you have to fix. But that pushing yourself into those places where you're uncomfortable, where you're not likely to do everything perfectly, is also where you will learn the most lessons. So you have to start by making a painting where there's at least the possibility that you'll stretch yourself and that you'll make some mistakes in order to fix them. So be willing to adjust things as you go. As you can see here, I'm going back and forth with my colors, and right off the bat I can kind of foreshadow for you, as I was painting, this was pretty much the first time I've painted with this extended of a palette, and it was really difficult for me to mix my colors because I felt like I had so many options. Another thing that's difficult for me is, obviously, I'm racing against the clock because I'm trying to paint this sunset street scene, and so the sun is setting, the sky is radically changing before my eyes, and I'm just not accustomed to how these brushes feel. I'm not accustomed to using these colors. But one of my goals was to try to create a convincing sense of light. And so I'm trying to get in these shadows of the clouds where the light is peeking in by kind of mixing a coolish gray to bounce off of the oranges and the reds and the warms that I'm seeing in the sky. And that's another reason why I toned the canvas this color, because I figured that that warmth would show through and help me here. So I'm taking some of my yellows, and I'm trying to mix up a color for like kind of the brightest bright highlight in the sky. And right now I'm noticing that I have to be super mindful of keeping my brush clean, and I also didn't put enough white out. This is a lesson that I need to carry with me into multiple paintings, because I seem to never put out enough white, and I always have to come back, and it's more convenient if you put out enough paint for yourself. I think also here, if I would have been smart, I probably would have used the warm white, but I think I was lazy and I just grabbed the nearest white, and I kind of stopped using that warm white. So I'm mixing in with a little bit of medium, and I'm struggling here against these brushes to get the paint to stick. And also another experiment that I'm doing here is trying to paint without any mineral spirits. This is something that's still ongoing. I've seen some painters where they don't use any medium at all. They don't use mineral spirits. They don't use any oil. They just use raw paint, and I was kind of attracted to that scene. Another thing that I had done was a super, super minimal drawing, and I'm trying to kind of find the drawing with just a few little indications that I started out with. But there's obviously a house back here and some neighborhood things. There's a linear perspective of the street, and I'm just trying to get in those different elements. But again, like this phthalo blue, a color that I've very rarely used at this point, and so I am struggling to manage my saturation. Different colors have different saturation, different colors have different tinting strengths and things, and I'm just feeling really, really confused and struggling at this point. One of the things I'm trying to think too is it's fairly overcast and it's fairly dark. It's difficult for me to judge the tonal values of the different planes on here. And again, I'm using some of that burnt sienna to try to desaturate and create a gray, and mixing with the brush. But because some of these colors are so foreign to me, it's difficult for me to really be able to accurately judge things. Trying to get in just some indication of these trees that kind of recede into the background, create some softness there. And this is really where oil paint shines, and that it allows you to really blend and create soft images like this. So now I'm looking, the sun is setting and it's casting its light at a low angle across the pavement, and I'm really seeing a lot of reflection off the pavement. And this is one thing that I always struggle with, so I could have anticipated this as a difficulty, that pavement color is challenging for me. But here you can see I'm kind of drawing in my shapes. I'm not worrying about it yet. I'm just trying to get something down. And again, painting a challenging subject like a sunset will really force you to work quickly and kind of make some snap decisions. You're probably not going to make every decision perfectly, but this is kind of how you learn. So I'm just trying to cover the canvas right now and put things in, get in the sidewalks and the streets. Now I'm mixing up some colors for my trees, and again, my plan here is to try to layer thicker paint on top of what I already put down, but without the solvents it's really difficult, and my paint is kind of mixing. I'm sort of taking a Bob Ross approach of dabbing in the darks, but I don't know. If you guys paint solventless, you need to let me know, how do you get the ability to layer paint on top of other paint without going too thick too soon or getting too slick too quickly? Because that is something, as I've been spending the last several months kind of working solventless, most of the time, not all of the time, it's been challenging for me to get hard shapes and hard lines and manage my tonal values without just creating soup. So that's a challenge for me. Here I'm sort of making indication for trees that kind of recede into the distance, and again using sort of a dry brush, blending to create that sense of texture and softness, the tendrils of the trees. And now I'm mixing up a green for the grass. And I really like painting over this color, if not for that it's the cadmium orange that I lay down to stain the canvas is kind of a mid-tone. So in general, that usually does help me find my tonal values. Now I'm going to indicate some windows on the house. I'm kind of just going for a very impressionistic look. If you look at a lot of the impressionists, they were really simple with some of their indications on buildings and stuff, and that's kind of what I'm trying to mimic here. One of the main things I think with plein air is obviously it imposes a lot of limits on us, right? You're going to have a limitation of time, most likely weather. You might be uncomfortable. The lighting will change. And, if you're painting, your subject will change to a certain extent, even if you're painting entirely natural subjects. But here, I'm painting things like cars. People are walking down the sidewalk. The lighting is changing. Cars are moving. And so all of those limits are also going to introduce challenges to you. And that's part of the joy and the fun of it, that we're trying to run up against those limits. We're trying to test ourselves. We're trying to see what we can capture in the moment. But you want to embrace those limits in the moment and do your best with them. And then really, as you're continuing to paint, if you choose either in the field, if you have the luxury of adjusting your painting, then you have to kind of go through these different choices and things and think about, okay, what are my goals here and how can I adjust here? Here I was seeing more red in the sky, and so I'm kind of putting more like a pinkish tint in the sky and trying to modulate those, putting a little indication for a stop sign down the road and a no parking sign. And again, I can see like I'm trying to adjust this pavement color and just touch things up. So once you finish your painting, you want to think about what was the goal with this piece. How did you achieve that goal, and how could you make it better? And for me, I really thought that the main issues were tonal values and the planes and the texture. Those were things that I wanted to fix. So right off the bat, you can see me fixing the tonal values of the pavement. It was way too bright, and also the grass, it was way too bright. Those planes where the sky should be the brightest thing to give me that sense of light, and the ground plane should be darker than it was. And so I'm also, as you can see, using a much more limited palette here, much more reduced, where it's something that I can control. And I'm going in and I'm reinforcing some darks. My vertical shapes should be, for the most part, some of my darkest shapes, and they were just very abstract. Again, adding more texture. Everything was soft, and I think that was because of my experimentation. Everything was soft, so adding in some more texture to just create a little bit more realism there, delineating some of the planes of the cars with highlights and darks, reasserting those darks. And you have to kind of say to yourself, like, what are the limits of what you want to do? At the end of the day, this was just a sketch. You want to keep a sketch. You want to keep a plein air painting, and you want to try to, learn from what you're learning here, but not take it too far. There's no way that this little 8x10 painting could be turned into the Mona Lisa or into a masterpiece, because that also wasn't the goal. And so, when you want to fix one of your paintings, it's good, obviously, to have a reference photo. That's something that you want to make sure that you have if you have it. But even if you don't have a reference photo, just looking at the painting and thinking about, what am I trying to communicate? What was the thing that attracted me to this scene? And then think about, well, where, I do think it's healthy to think about in what ways did I get that right? But then also to think, what ways can I make it better? Remember, you have a voice that matters. Go be creative. I'll see you next time.